The market takes a dive. Is it going to be a very bad winner?
This is Invest with Jacob.
Okay, guys, so in yesterday's video, we talked about a couple different paths, and we were looking actually for a little bit more upside before we saw down, but they elected to take the direct route lower, which was our alternate count, and now we have a path that is hitting a very critical area. I'll get into that in just one second, but first, if you're new here, welcome to the show, guys. My name is Jacob Gabbard, and this is Invest with Jacob, where we use Elliott Wave Theory to break down the SP 500 and the NASDAQ. I highly encourage you to hit that subscribe button down below so that you can get our daily S&P updates, our trade setups, and our buy alerts. All right, guys, so we did talk about path lower, and now we're kind of at an inflection point here. We've been here for a while. The market's been fighting it. You would expect the bulls to step up here for a lot of different reasons, but if they don't, it looks very bad overall. So let's jump into the chart and take a look. Okay, guys, so here we are on the 1-hour futures chart for the S&P 500, and we did view this as a potential A, B, C because diagonals rarely play out. The ABC structure failed. They pushed down pretty hard yesterday and took us down below the low from last week. So with that, we have 5 down on the ES to complete the structure we were looking for into this area. But I don't think we've bottomed just yet, and that's mostly because of the NASDAQ. If it were just on ES and we take each chart on its own, the ES has enough waves in place to be done. So I do think we are in a bottoming area. I don't necessarily think we've bottomed yet because the NASDAQ still needs to make a low. And if it makes a low, it'll usually bring ES along with it. So I'd be very cautious about a bounce right now and look more for maybe like a 4 or 5 to the downside. So overall, what we're looking at off of this high here, we had a pretty clear corrective structure up. They failed down, and then we were going to look for a C wave up, given that we got some overlap in here with this wave 4 coming back up, and it just wasn't a very clean structure to the downside. But they did complete this diagonal to the downside here. So you have a diagonal down, and what that usually ends with is a push through the bottom, which we got, a sharp move down, which we got, and then we'll see wherever it bottoms, if it's already bottomed, and again, I'm skeptical on that for 2 reasons. One is the NASDAQ, and 2, you normally see this kind of move. Like you would have seen them close up around 4,300 today or possibly even higher to retrace very quickly out of that diagonal pattern, and we didn't get that just yet. Now, it's not impossible that they kind of slow rolled it so that they could do it overnight and trap a whole lot of bears, but typically what I would want to see here is a pretty strong move to the upside. So based solely on the NASDAQ, on the ES, we have enough waves in place. Keep that in mind. Solely on the NASDAQ, I would look for a spike up and one more path lower down into the 4240 to 30 area. And if you remember a couple days ago, I talked about that pivot at 4246 for the bull count. But on the SPX, there is a little bit of runway to the downside. So if the NASDAQ does need to push down, we can push a little bit lower. You really want the SPX to hold 4170 or so. If the SPX gets below 4170, that's a very bad sign for the bulls. Breaking this pivot, if they do, is still a bad sign for the bulls. I would, at that point, want them to prove to me that they're going to make a bullish rally. But as long as they hold 4170 on the SPX, they do still have some life, and they would still be able to look higher. So the alternate count for this is that this is actually a leading diagonal in what would be wave 1 of wave 5 of 3. So in that case, we would have completed wave 3 of 3 to the downside, okay? And this would be 3 of 3 of wave 1 of C. So it gets a little granular there. It's a little difficult to follow. But essentially what we're trying to make to the downside, if the bears are going to take over, is a wave 1 of the bigger wave C. And inside of that wave 1, we're trying to complete all of wave 3. So this would have been 3 of 3 to the downside here. This would have been 4 of 3 up. This would be wave 1 down as a leading diagonal instead of an ending diagonal, because it could be either wave 1 or wave 5, depending on which way we go here. And we would still look for a sharp retrace. The difference would be when they get here, in the bullish sense, they'll come back down, test, and go. And in the bearish sense, they'll come back down, test, give you a bounce, and then go in wave 3 of 3 of that 5 of 3. Again, I know that gets a little complicated when I get down into the subwaves, but essentially understand this. This bottom would be a wave 1 of a bigger wave 5 of 3. And so that target is down here at the 1618 at around 4138. You would look for a pretty strong bounce out of here. And if it's corrective, it would hold in this area around 4340 to 50. And we would look for a very good, strong downside move here to give us the 3 of 3 of that bigger 5 of 3 down to 4138. And this would be all of wave 3 of wave 1 of C. Let's zoom out so we can see that just a little bit better. Okay, from a zoomed out perspective, that would make this a bigger wave 1 and this a bigger wave 2. And then you'd have 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3 would have been the low that we struck here. 4 of 3 would be this bounce up that we had here to 43.60 or so, 70. And then this diagonal down would be 1 of 5 of 3, and then you'd look for 2, 3, 4, 5 down here, and this would be all of wave 3 of a bigger wave 1, okay? Then you'd get a wave 4 bounce and then back down again toward the 40-30 area. And this would be that bigger bearish count that I talked about all the way in last October. So if the bulls can't hold, they are threatening to take it down to 40-30, and that would be in wave 1 of wave C, and then we'd look for a pretty decent bounce back towards 4,500 before really seeing a pretty strong sell-off from there. So overall, the bulls are at an inflection point. They need to hold here and start a rally higher. Back over this high at 43.70 would be a good start. But as long as they remain below that, pressure is down, and we can still play out this path towards the 41.40 area, then up, and then down toward 40.30 overall. Over on the NASDAQ, now on the NASDAQ, we have a little bit different of a setup where they haven't even reached their 1.0 down here at 14.411, and they're still quite far from it up at 14.722, which is really kind of weak for this move down. Considering how much selling's been going on, you would think they would easily hit this number and be able to push back up, and they weren't able to do so. This is still well above their pivot, so it's a safe number for the bulls to hit and get down here. So this is kind of weak looking overall to the downside, and one of the cautionary tales I've been saying about why a bullish rally is very possible from here is that the NASDAQ's just not participating in the same way the ES is. And so what we're looking at here overall is you got a potential for them to hit this 5 down, and that would be the minimum target for a wave 3. Okay, so we'd have 1, 2, and then this would be 3 of 3 down here at 14.411. And then 4 of 3 would have to hold the 618 here, and then you'd look for 5 of 3 down here to the 13.856 to 13.514 area. So you'd look for NASDAQ to make a pretty strong move here, and they might extend in 5 of 3 to get this where it's supposed to be if that's what's going to happen and we're going to fail. Okay, but again, we haven't even hit the 1.0, and typically a 3 of 3 hits the 1.236, so they're not even to the secondary target or the minimum required target. So they have to get down to this level before I'll even consider the bearish count. Then they have to hold 14.965 and push down again toward the 13.856 to 13.514 level. But I don't see that happening just given the overall structure and where we're at in the oversold nature of the market in general. And there's a lot of other things that I go over in my room of why we should be looking for a short-term bottom or possibly even a full-on reversal here. And those are all taught in the Elliott Wave for Beginners course, so you should check that out later in the video. But in the bigger picture to the downside, that's what you'd look for. You'd look for them to come down and hit this 14.411, come back up, hold this 618, and then push down. And the more primary count or the bullish count, okay, as we zoom in here to the 1 hour, we can count this downside move. It's not super ideal, but we can count this downside move as a 1, 2, 1, 2 for a 1-2 setup. Then we get all of wave 3 down, wave 4 up, and wave 5 down. And we would really want this wave 5 down to be a poke of this wave 3, so kind of short because that would keep ES where it needs to be for the bullish rally. But they can push it all the way down to this 14.411 for the 1.0 extension, but I'd really like to see it hit based on overall targets and everything else. This 14.480 to 14.450 area, possibly even as high as 14.550. I think just a poke of this low is all they need to get a reset on the market and get the bullish count started to the upside. So anytime they break this low, I would be very cautious. Down to as far as 14.411. If they break through that, we can start to talk about more bearish things, as that will likely break the bull pivot on ES as well. But they need to get to at least this line down here for the bearish count to play out this 14.411. Currently, they're targeting more in the 14.550 area, somewhere in there, 14.450 to 550 to bottom, and then we would look for some kind of rally, whether it be a little short-term one and we get one more low or a bigger rally. I actually think it's probably going to be more like the bigger rally. And the reason is, again, for a lot of indications on the chart that we don't talk about on these videos that are taught in the Elliott Wave course and also discussed in my live room. So that's what we're looking for on the NASDAQ. We would look for them to hold the 14,450 to 550 area in conjunction with ES holding its bull pivot. It's going to be very unlikely one breaks the pivot and the other doesn't. So we'd like to see them both hold the pivot and then a bounce and rally, a bounce or rally, but I prefer rally overall just based on the structure. And that would be our overall primary accounts. Guys, if you love the information that I put out in these videos and you want real-time market updates from me, you need to check out investwithjacob.com. There's a link down in the description. Go ahead and click that link. It'll take you right over to the webpage. Once you're there, check out our membership plans area. We have 2 incredible plans, and they both come with a 7-day free trial because I want you to get in there, make sure you love it, and become part of our trading team before you ever spend a penny. You can cancel at any time. We also have our Elliott Wave for Beginners online course. This course is helping real traders make real money and finally understand the market in a way that makes sense. If you're tired of watching the news cycles and not understanding why good news makes the market go down and bad news makes the market go up, you can finally have a way to understand technical analysis, key levels, and support and resistance in a way that's measurable and understandable and allows you to trade off of it. It's 25 videos where I go over 3 different sections. The first is our introduction, where we go over your expectations, emotion, KISS method, and why Elliott Wave works. The second would be your chart setup, how you use all of these tools on your chart to confirm tops, bottoms, turns, failures, and confirmations. And then the Elliott Wave for Beginners portion, where we go through each wave and we talk about all of their parameters, where they fail, what their targets are, what their confirmation points are, what you're looking for in a typical wave of that variety. We also go through corrective depth theory, theory of alternation, the pivot, and we show it all on the charts and how to use it. It is included in both of our monthly plans. So if you don't want to pay for the course, you can get one of our monthly memberships and you get the course for free. In our first room, the Invest with Jacob room, you get all of my real-time market updates, all of my buy and sell alerts, all of your Elliott Wave questions answered, a midday video where I go over exactly where we are in the charts and what to expect, as well as the training material you just saw. We trade the SPY and the QQQ and we swing trade, which means our trades last anywhere from a few days to a few months. So we don't trade quite as often as a day trading room does. However, if you are looking for day trading as well as individual stocks, you need to check out PT's Throne Room. In there, you get everything you get in the Invest with Jacob room, as well as individual stocks, day trading, and PT's reduced risk binary method that just crushes the market. He gets you in at a cheap price, and he gets you big multiples on your money, and it's how he structures the trade that's so unique. It's something you really have to see to understand, and that's another reason we give you that 7-day free trial. He also started a challenge account where he put $4,000 into an account, trading mini ES futures, showing you how to build a small account into a large retirement or savings account. Guys, we would love to have you in these rooms so we can all make money together. All right, the key takeaways for today, we are looking for another low. We would look for the ES to come down into the 4240 to 50 area and try to hold in there. They do have some runway. Overall, 4170 SPX, very big level to hold. We still really want them to stay as high in the pivot as we can. That's a much more bullish posture. But as long as they're over 4170, they're okay. Over on the NASDAQ, looking for another low down here to break this low and give us the 5th wave down to clear up this nasty structure here. Once they give us that, we'll find out if they're going to push all the way down to the 1.0 or if they're going to be able to hold kind of a poke of this wave 3 to give us 5 down and to give us a reversal off of that and a more bullish structure based on a lot of the parameters we're seeing across the markets. Guys, that is your market update for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow.